Before you listen to this, let me say one thing clearly. I'm not here to motivate you. I'm not here to comfort you. I'm here to tell you the truth I wish someone had told me earlier. Not when I was ready, but when I still had time to choose differently. I was sitting in my kitchen last Tuesday morning, the kind of quiet morning where you can hear the refrigerator hum, when it finally made sense to me. 73 years of living, and only now did I understand what I had been doing wrong all along. It wasn't something anyone told me. It wasn't written in a book or learned from a sermon. It was just there, clear as daylight, the way certain truths only become visible after enough time has passed. I had spent most of my life wondering why people drifted away from me, why my marriage ended, why my children called less and less as the years went on, why friendships that once seemed solid just faded into Christmas cards and then into nothing at all. I had explanations for all of it, good reasons that made sense at the time. But that morning, drinking my coffee and looking out at the bird feeder I'd hung up last spring, I finally saw it. The problem had never been them. It had been me. Not in the way you might think. I wasn't cruel or unfaithful or neglectful in any obvious way. I showed up. I provided. I kept my promises. I did what I thought a good person was supposed to do. But somewhere along the way, I had learned to live inside my own head, to see the world through a lens of how things should be rather than how they were, and I had forgotten to make space for other people to simply exist as themselves. I grew up in Pennsylvania in the 50s, in a household where feelings weren't discussed and problems were solved through hard work and silence. My father ran a hardware store and my mother kept the house in order. They loved each other, I suppose, but it was a practical kind of love, the kind that showed itself in meals prepared on time and bills paid in full. I learned early on that life was about responsibility, about doing things right, about having a plan and sticking to it. That lesson served me well in some ways. I graduated from high school, got a job at an insurance company, worked my way up steadily over the years. I married Janet when I was 24. She was a secretary at the company, pretty and organized and kind. We bought a small house in the suburbs, the kind of place everyone was buying back then. We had 2 children, Mark and then Sarah, 3 years apart. From the outside, we looked like we had it all figured out. Inside, though, there was always this distance I couldn't quite name. I thought it was normal. I thought that was just what life felt like after the excitement of courtship wore off. I worked long hours because that's what you did if you wanted to provide for your family. I came home tired most evenings, ate dinner, watched the news, and went to bed. On weekends, I mowed the lawn and fixed things around the house. I coached Mark's little league team for a few seasons, not because I was particularly interested in baseball but because it seemed like what a good father should do. Janet took care of most of the day-to-day parenting. She was good at it, patient in ways I never was. I told myself we had a system that worked. She handled the emotional side of things, the scraped knees and hurt feelings and school projects, and I handled the practical side, the mortgage and the car repairs and the college savings account. Looking back now, I see how convenient that division was for me. I see how it let me avoid the harder work of actually being present with my family, of sitting with them in their joys and fears and uncertainties. But at the time, I thought I was doing everything right. The funny thing about living with someone for years is that you can stop really seeing them. Janet would tell me about her day and I would nod and make appropriate sounds, but I wasn't really listening. I was thinking about work, or about the leaky faucet in the bathroom, or about what needed to be done over the weekend. When she wanted to talk about something that was bothering her, some conflict with a neighbor or worry about one of the kids, I would offer solutions immediately. Fix it, move on, don't dwell on it. That was my approach to everything. I thought I was being helpful. I thought that's what she wanted from me. It never occurred to me that sometimes people don't want solutions. Sometimes they just want to be heard. Sometimes they want you to sit with them in their uncertainty and say, "Yes, this is hard, and I'm here with you." But I didn't know how to do that. I had never learned. Mark was a quiet boy, thoughtful and careful with his words. He liked to draw and read and spend time alone in his room. I worried about that. I thought he should be more outgoing, more social, more like the other boys his age. I pushed him to join sports teams and go to parties and make more friends. I thought I was helping him prepare for the real world, teaching him how to be strong. But every time I pushed, he pulled back a little more. By the time he was in high school, we barely talked. He would come home, go straight to his room, and stay there until dinner. At the table, I would ask him questions about school and he would give one-word answers. I told myself it was just a phase, that all teenagers went through this. I didn't see that I had made him feel like who he was wasn't good enough, that I had spent years trying to change him into someone else instead of accepting the person he actually was. Sarah was different, more outgoing and confident, but I failed her in other ways. I had certain ideas about what her life should look like, about the kind of career she should pursue and the kind of person she should marry. When she made choices that didn't fit those ideas, I let her know I was disappointed. I thought I was guiding her, protecting her from mistakes. But what I was really doing was telling her that my approval was conditional, that my love depended on her living the life I had imagined for her rather than the life she wanted for herself. Janet left when I was 51. It wasn't dramatic. There was no affair, no big fight, no single moment that broke everything apart. She just sat me down one evening and told me she couldn't do it anymore. She said she felt invisible, that she had been trying to connect with me for years and I had never really let her in. She said she didn't know who I was beneath all the routines and responsibilities, and that I didn't really know her either. I argued with her at first. I pointed out everything I had done, all the ways I had provided and protected and kept our life stable. But she just looked at me with this tired sadness and said that wasn't what she had needed. She said she had needed a partner, someone who saw her and listened to her and let her matter in ways that went beyond the practical arrangements of daily life. I didn't understand it then. I thought she was being unfair, that she was throwing away a perfectly good marriage for some vague sense of emotional dissatisfaction. We divorced quietly. She moved to an apartment across town. The kids were already in college by then. They split their time between us at first, but gradually they gravitated toward her place more than mine. I told myself it was because she was more fun, less strict. I didn't see that they felt the same thing with me that she had felt. That invisible wall I kept between myself and everyone else. The years after the divorce were strange. I kept working, kept maintaining my routines, but the house felt emptier than it ever had before. I tried dating a few times, but nothing ever stuck. Women would seem interested at first, and then after a few months they would drift away. I couldn't figure out what I was doing wrong. I was polite, I paid for dinner, I remembered to call. But there was always this point where they would start to pull back, where I could feel them losing interest even though nothing obvious had changed. One woman, Margaret, actually tried to explain it to me. We had been seeing each other for about 4 months when she told me she didn't think it was going to work out. I asked her why. She thought for a moment and then said that being with me felt like standing next to someone who was always looking past her towards something else. She said I was present physically but absent in every other way. She said she didn't think I was capable of really letting someone in. I told her she was wrong, that she didn't understand me. But after she left, her words stayed with me. I didn't want to believe they were true, but somewhere deep down I wondered if maybe she was right. Mark moved to Oregon after college. He got married, had 2 kids, built a life out there that seemed full and happy. He called on holidays and birthdays, sent photos occasionally, but there was always a formality to our conversations, a careful distance. When I would visit, which wasn't often because I didn't like to travel, it felt like I was a guest in his life rather than a real part of it. His wife was kind to me, but I could tell she didn't know quite what to make of me. The grandkids were polite but shy. I would watch Mark with them, the way he got down on the floor to play, the way he listened when they talked about their day, the way he seemed genuinely interested in their little problems and triumphs, and I would feel this strange mixture of pride and sadness. Pride because he was a better father than I had been. Sadness because I didn't know how to be that way, even with my own grandchildren. Sarah stayed closer to home, but we weren't close. She became a teacher, married a man I never quite approved of even though I tried not to say so, had one daughter who they named Emma. She would invite me to holidays, but I could tell it was out of obligation more than genuine desire for my company. I would sit at her table, eating food she had prepared, watching her laugh with her husband and daughter, and I would feel like I was watching a play I wasn't really part of. When I tried to offer advice or share my opinions, there would be this subtle shift in the room, this tension that everyone else could feel but pretended wasn't there. I retired at 65. The company gave me a watch and a small party. A few coworkers gave speeches about my dedication and reliability. It was nice, I suppose, but also strange. I had worked there for over 40 years, and yet I realized I didn't really know any of these people beyond the surface level of office interactions. I had never gone out for drinks with them after work, never been to their homes for dinner, never let them into my life in any meaningful way. I had kept everything professional, appropriate, distant. I thought that's what you were supposed to do. I thought that maintaining boundaries was the same thing as maintaining dignity. But as I drove home that last day with my watch and my retirement papers, I felt something I couldn't quite name. It was a kind of loneliness that had nothing to do with being alone and everything to do with realizing I had spent my entire adult life surrounded by people without ever really connecting with any of them. The years of retirement stretched out slow and quiet. I developed routines. Morning coffee, crossword puzzle, walk around the neighborhood. Lunch, reading, afternoon nap. Dinner, television, bed. I joined a senior center for a while but found the conversations there tiresome and superficial. I tried volunteering at a food bank but stopped after a few months because I felt awkward around the other volunteers, couldn't seem to find my place in their easy camaraderie. I spent a lot of time thinking about the past, about all the moments I had lived through without really living them. I thought about Janet and the way she used to hum while she cooked dinner, and how I had found it annoying instead of endearing. I thought about the time Mark showed me a drawing he had made, proud and hopeful, and how I had barely glanced at it before telling him to go do his homework. I thought about Sarah asking me to come watch her in a school play and how I had said I was too busy, even though I probably wasn't. These memories would come to me at odd times, while I was washing dishes or folding laundry, and they would sit heavy in my chest. I talked to a counselor for a while, a woman named Patricia who worked with older adults dealing with loneliness and depression. I wasn't sure I believed in therapy, thought it was a bit self-indulgent, but my doctor suggested it and I didn't have anything better to do. Patricia was patient with me, asked gentle questions, never pushed too hard. Slowly, over many months, she helped me start to see patterns in my life that I had never noticed before. The way I deflected any conversation that got too emotional. The way I turned everything into a problem to be solved rather than an experience to be shared. The way I had spent my entire life trying to control things, to make everything fit into my understanding of how the world should work, and how that need for control had pushed everyone away. She never said I was wrong or bad. She just helped me see. And the seeing was harder than anything I had ever done. I started trying to change, even though I wasn't sure it was possible at my age. I called Mark, and instead of asking about his job and the kids in that automatic way I always had, I asked him how he was really doing, what was on his mind. There was a long pause on the phone, like he didn't quite know how to respond. But then he started talking, really talking, about stress at work and worries about money and feeling overwhelmed sometimes. I didn't offer solutions. I just listened. I said that sounded hard. I said I was proud of how he was handling it. When we hung up, I sat there for a long time, feeling like something small but important had shifted. I did the same with Sarah. I apologized for things I had said years ago, judgments I had made about her choices. She was quiet at first, maybe suspicious of why I was bringing this up now. But over time, over more calls and visits, something began to thaw between us. It wasn't dramatic. We didn't suddenly become close. But there was a little less distance, a little more warmth. The real change, though, happened inside me. I started noticing things I had never noticed before. The way light came through the kitchen window in the afternoon. The sound of rain on the roof. The feeling of my own breath moving in and out of my body. I started letting myself feel things instead of immediately pushing feelings away or trying to fix them. When I felt sad, I let myself be sad. When I felt regretful, I sat with that regret instead of defending myself against it. It was uncomfortable at first, like exercising a muscle that had atrophied from years of disuse. But gradually it became easier. I started to understand that all those years I had thought I was being strong by not showing emotion, by staying in control, by keeping everything running smoothly, I had actually been hiding. I had been so afraid of vulnerability, so afraid of not having the answers, so afraid of being seen as weak or uncertain, that I had built walls around myself without even realizing it. And those walls had kept everyone out. That Tuesday morning when it all finally made sense, I wasn't doing anything special. I was just sitting there, drinking coffee, watching a sparrow at the bird feeder. And I suddenly understood that everyone who had left my life, Janet and Mark and Sarah and all those friends who had drifted away and all those women who had lost interest, they hadn't left because they didn't care about me. They had left because I never gave them anything real to hold on to. I had given them my time and my money and my sense of responsibility, but I had never given them myself. I had never let them see my fears or my doubts or my hopes. I had never asked them what they needed and then actually listened to the answer. I had never made them feel like they mattered to me beyond their roles in the life I had constructed. And without that, without real presence and real connection, love has nowhere to grow. It just withers, slowly, until one day people realize they're exhausted from trying to connect with someone who isn't really there. I thought about my father, about the way he had lived, and I realized I had copied his approach without ever questioning it. He had been a good provider too, solid and reliable and emotionally distant. My mother had stayed with him until he died, but I remembered the loneliness in her eyes, the way she seemed to shrink into herself as the years went on. I thought about all the men of his generation, all of us who were taught that strength meant silence, that love meant providing, that showing up meant being physically present while emotionally absent. And I felt a deep sadness for all of us, for all the connection we had missed, for all the love we had been offered and couldn't quite accept because we didn't know how. But I also felt something else. Relief, maybe. Or acceptance. I couldn't go back and do it differently. I couldn't undo the hurt I had caused or the distance I had created. But I could stop pretending I didn't understand why it had happened. I could stop blaming other people for not being satisfied with what I had offered. I could stop defending my choices and just acknowledge that they had consequences, and that those consequences had left me here, alone in my kitchen at 73, finally understanding what I should have understood decades ago. There's a strange kind of peace that comes with that acknowledgement. Not happiness, exactly, but a sense of clarity that feels almost like forgiveness, even though I'm not sure who I'm forgiving or who's forgiving me. I called Mark that afternoon. I told him I had been thinking about things, about the kind of father I had been. I told him I was sorry for all the ways I had made him feel like he wasn't enough, for all the times I had tried to change him instead of just loving him as he was. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said he appreciated me saying that it meant something to hear it even now. We talked for over an hour, longer than we had talked in years. It didn't fix everything. There's too much history, too many years of distance for one conversation to bridge. But it was a start. I did the same with Sarah. The conversations were hard and I cried, which surprised me, but it felt right somehow. Like I was finally being honest, finally letting them see me as a full person rather than just the rigid figure I had always presented. I still live alone. I'm still learning how to be present, how to let people in, how to exist in the world with my heart a little more open than it used to be. It's slow work and some days I slip back into old patterns that need to control and fix and keep everything at arm's length. But I'm trying. I've learned that it's okay not to have all the answers, that sometimes the most important thing you can do is admit you don't know, that you're uncertain, that you need help too. I've learned that real strength isn't about never showing weakness. It's about being brave enough to be fully human with other people, messy and imperfect and real. I've learned that love isn't something you earn through reliability and provision. It's something that grows in the space between people when they let themselves be seen and when they take the time to really see each other. I think about all the people my age who might be going through something similar, who might be looking back on their lives and wondering where everyone went, why their children don't call more, why their marriages ended, why friendships faded. I think about how easy it is to blame other people, to say they were ungrateful or demanding or unable to appreciate what we gave them. And I think about how much harder but how much more truthful it is to look at our own part in it, to acknowledge the ways we built walls without meaning to, the ways we loved people but never quite let them in. That's what I finally understood at 73. That everyone eventually leaves not because people are inherently unreliable or selfish or incapable of commitment, but because connection requires presence and vulnerability and real attention, and if you don't give those things, if you keep yourself hidden behind routines and responsibilities and the idea of who you think you should be, then there's nothing for people to hold on to. They drift away not because they want to, but because there's nowhere for them to anchor. I don't know how much time I have left. Could be 5 years, could be 20. But however long it is, I want to spend it differently than I spent the first 73 years. I want to notice things. I want to let myself feel what I feel without immediately trying to make it go away. I want to tell people I love them not just in actions but in words. I want to ask questions and actually listen to the answers. I want to be someone who shows up not just physically but in every way that matters. It won't undo the past. It won't bring back all those lost years. But maybe it will mean that the time I have left is lived more fully, more honestly, more connected to the people around me and to my own heart. And maybe, just maybe, that will be enough. Not enough to make up for what was lost, but enough to make the present and whatever future I have left feel like something worth holding on to. That's all any of us can do, really. Understand what we've learned, forgive ourselves as best we can, and try to do better with whatever time remains. At 73, I finally understand that. And understanding it, difficult as it was to reach, feels like a kind of gift I didn't know I was looking for. If this made you stop and think, don't ignore that feeling. It means this lesson was meant for you. Subscribe, not because you have to, but because there are more truths coming that most people only realize too late. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. Sometimes one honest message can change the direction of a life.